Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
And welcome to NHL Wraparound for Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and with the NHL so competitive this year, so many teams in the mix for playoff spots, even in the early going here, I think we can only say that maybe there's two or three teams that are dropping out relatively quickly. One of the teams in the mix, the Utah Mammoth, who are right on the bubble of a playoff spot, despite playing the majority of the first quarter of the season on the road. And we're going to be joined shortly by their general manager, Bill Armstrong.
And that's going to be a great talk because I'm interested to talk to Bill about his Phoenix days and Arizona days, and then the transition to Salt Lake City, Utah, and what that's been like. And the fact that he's now got some money that he can spend and he can do things a lot differently than he was doing them when they were scraping by in Arizona. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And Utah's doing about exactly as I predicted they would do this year. They're knocking on the door, banging on the door of the wild card spots.
And 5-1-1 at the Delta Center this year. But we'll take all that up with Bill when he joins us shortly. But first, three things you need to pay attention to. 3 hat tricks. Connor Bedard, a 5-2 win over Calgary. It's his second hat trick this season. And one of the things I noticed here, once again, Neil, was that Bedard is out on the ice in a defensive position with the Blackhawks protecting a 4-2 lead, and the third goal, the empty netter, came as he just turned and wired a shot from literally 180 feet away. But again, this is the confidence that Jeff Blashill is showing in Bedard to put him in these late game situations to help protect the lead.
Yeah, and you know what? We had Jeff Blashill on before the season started, and we talked to him, and he was excited about this Blackhawks team and this opportunity in Chicago. He got a lot of years of trying to rebuild the Detroit Red Wings. And when I say that, I don't mean that he was trying to do it by himself, but he was trying to take what he knew was an uphill battle with the Red Wings and do the best he could and work with their young players. And obviously he is doing a real good job. And especially, as you noted, with Bedard, to show him the confidence that I do believe in you. I want you to believe in yourself, not only in your offensive skills that you've shown your whole life, but also in your hockey IQ and the way you can play the defensive part of the game.
Hat trick number 2. Macklin Celebrini of the San Jose Sharks scoring all 3 goals in a 3-2 overtime win against Bill Armstrong's Utah Mammoth. He has 30 points in 20 games. The only other teenagers to accomplish 30 points in 20 games, Wayne Gretzky, 1980-81, and Sidney Crosby in 2006, 2007. So you talk about putting yourself in some elite company. Celebrini doing it.
I'm surprised you didn't have Mario Lemieux on that list with them, but I guess he didn't do 30 points in 20 games. Celebrini has been just fantastic for San Jose. And you watch him play, it's hard to believe he's a teenager, except when you get a good close-up on his face, because he still has a baby face. But he's an excellent player. And I think that this notes how good a hands the NHL's in when you say that Bedard got a hat trick on the same night as Celebrini got a hat trick. Now all we need is for defenseman Matthew Schaefer to get a hat trick. That'll be a little bit harder for a defenseman. But those are the last 3 number 1 overall picks in the NHL entry drafts.
And we've seen these NHL institutionals that say this is the next golden age of hockey. And when you look back at Ovechkin and Crosby and Matthews and McDavid, and now these 3 youngsters coming up, great future for the NHL.
It certainly looks that way. And when you add into that there's not going to be a work stoppage, which all the others have had to go through, by the way, there's bright things ahead if this can keep going the way it's going. And this is year 3 for Bedard, but he seems to really be finding his own in year 3 after struggling for 2 years with a very struggling franchise, the Chicago Blackhawks. So same with Celebrini, struggling franchise. That's how you get the number 1 pick. Islanders are a little bit different case when we talk about Matthew Schaefer, because the Islanders were not a bottom team of the league. They weren't number 32 or 31 in the league. They just happened to win the lottery and moved up by 10 spots. And what a blessing that was for the Islanders and their fans, because this kid is really something else.
Really is. Hat trick number 3, Jake Guentzel. His 8th career in a 5-1 win over the New Jersey Devils. Since the start of last season, when Guentzel went over to the Lightning from the Carolina Hurricanes, 99 games played, 52 goals, 48 assists, 100 points, and a plus 21. Steven Stamkos, by comparison, who departed the Lightning for the Nashville Predators, 102 games, 31 goals, 27 assists, 58 points, 42 fewer than Guentzel, and a minus 44. What a contrast.
It is. And let's give Steven Stamkos a little bit of a break here and say, well, he's on a far inferior team with Nashville Predators than Guentzel is with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But still, that is a huge difference between those two players, and really shows you that Julien Brisebois and his management staff made the right call in allowing their captain, their longtime captain, the guy that hoisted those Stanley Cups for them. They let him go. And he moved on and signed with Nashville Predators. And in their mind, they replaced him with Jake Guentzel. And now you can see that move was the right move to make, a hard move to make, because, it's an emotional one for the fans, letting go of number 91. But I'm sure they're all glad now that they have Jake Guentzel wearing the blue and white.
But remember the other thing about Stamkos, it was that he was supposed to go to Nashville and bring that team next level. That was not a bad team. It was a playoff team the year before he got there. So he was supposed to bring it up to the next level, and that just hasn't happened.
Yeah, he, along with the others that they signed that summer, people were looking at a Stanley Cup possibility that summer. Yep. And they're light years from a Stanley Cup.
Item number 2. The New York Islanders are now 5-1 on their 7-game road trip after a 3-2 win in Dallas, which marked the season debut, of Captain Jamie Benn for the Stars, who had been out for surgery for a collapsed lung. But this game was incredibly wild in that third period, because it's a 1-1 tie. Islanders went ahead on Bo Horvat's 13th goal, and then up 3-1 on a goal by Kyle Palmieri, with Horvat in the penalty box for a double minor, and then wound up serving him misconduct, which essentially took him out for the rest of regulation. Jason Robertson got the second goal of the game to make it 3-2. And then the controversy began with Mikko Rantanen with a real dangerous hit on Alexander Romanov. Romanov went in literally face and shoulder first into the end boards. I thought Patrick Roy was going to have a stroke. And the optics of the way Romanov went down and then the way he was helped off was pretty awful.
It was really bad. And, of course, I'm sure that Patrick Roy loved being able to do his stuff behind the bench like we've seen him do in Colorado and other places, and rant and rave and get all red-faced and go crazy. I don't know who he was doing that at. But anyway, it was a bad hit in that game by Rantanen on Romanov. And then the goal was nullified by goaltender interference, which I thought, I'd love to hear what Dave Jackson has to say on that one, because I thought that Robertson was actually pushed across the front of the goaltender, Riddick, at the end there. But the referees and Toronto, being the war room, the situation room, they all looked at it and they said, yes, it was goalie interference. So that was basically the end of the game right there. No tying goal, and the Islanders win 3-2 on the road.
I think we're still waiting to hear on Romanoff, but one thing that we did learn was that after the game, he did not go to the hospital, which by the look of things, it was hard to imagine that he could go off the ice looking that way and then just wind up spending time in the trainer's room after that. So again, hopefully he's okay. There was the usual defense of Rantanen, in this case, coming from head coach Glenn Gullick, saying that maybe he was tweaked a little bit by defenseman Scott Mayfield. But if you look closely at that video, Rantanen is full on concentrating on laying that hit. So a dangerous hit, but also hearing that the boarding major and the game misconduct, that's as far as the discipline goes. No supplementary discipline coming for Rantanen.
So there we go. And that's... I think he's lucky that there's no supplemental discipline coming, maybe because there was an injury on the play, maybe, but it was very dangerous.
We're not going to speculate, and we'll certainly have an update on short shifts on Friday. So the regular season hits the quarter pole on Thursday. So I pose this question to you. Of the 16 teams that did not make the playoffs last year, how many are in playoff spot today?
Quite a few. I can't give you the exact number, but there's quite a few that are in that spot.
You want to throw a number out?
5.
7. Detroit, first in the Atlantic. Boston, second in the Atlantic. Pittsburgh, third in the Metro. And the New York Islanders, a wild card in the West. Anaheim, first in the Pacific. And Chicago and Seattle, the 2 wild cards. So when you see how difficult it is to figure out what's going to happen on a night-to-night basis, here's Exhibit A.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The only one that you can depend on in this is so far this season is the team that hasn't made the playoffs for 14 straight years. And that's the Buffalo Sabres, who are languishing again in last place in the Eastern Conference.
But reason for hope that we'll get to later on in the show. And that will wrap up 3 things you need to pay attention to. Now, let's welcome in the general manager of the Utah Mammoth, Bill Armstrong.
Pleasure to bring in another one of my peers as far as current day peers as a general manager. And we're talking about the Utah Mammoth and Bill Armstrong. And Bill, thank you for doing this show with me and Vic.
Absolute pleasure to come on. And, I've always watched you, Neil, from afar, just with your scouting background. So I knew you a long time before you probably knew me, just in regards to studying your path and how you became a GM. And then, Larry Plow has been my consultant. He's been my GM all the way back. And I know you had worked with Larry a long time. So I'd always heard a ton of good stories about you and your eye for talent. So, I was always appreciate you having me on and nice to meet you, Vic.
Speaking of which, Bill, I will tell you that I'm at every Islander game. And I just told my wife last night, I said, did you know that the guy that I drafted in the second round in 1989 in that famous 89 draft, Bob Bugner, is the assistant coach for the Islanders? She said, well, have you talked to him? And I said, no, I haven't gone down to near the Islanders dressing room. I usually go to the visitors room and talk to the visiting guys because I know everybody and I want to say I don't get to see them. Anyway, getting back to Bill Armstrong and the Utah Mammoth, who's in their first year of having a nickname, the Mammoth. Bill, I thought of this a couple of days ago. The last teams in the NHL before you to relocate to a city that had never had NHL hockey. The last time that happened was when the Winnipeg Jets went to Phoenix in 1996. And then in 1997, the Hartford Whalers went to Greensboro, North Carolina, and eventually Raleigh, North Carolina, to become the Carolina Hurricanes. Yeah. So it hasn't been done in a long time. And I know that it's not as easy as it might seem on the outside to pack up in one place and go to another.
It was easy in the sense that when we arrived, there was a hangar full of kids chanting for us, and we needed a little bit of love at that time. We'd been beaten up pretty good, just with no fans in the situation that we were in. And we got on the bus and drove down, and there was another 18,000 people waiting for us with 5,000 people out front. So I knew it was going to be an easy fit at that point, and we got a chance to meet Ryan and Ashley Smith, and they had set the bar high of what they wanted to provide for the players and the team coming in. So it was an exciting time. I think for everybody moving, it almost takes a year to get your place set up, and everybody had a horror story. And so it took us a while to kind of get adjusted to being here, but it's been nothing about greatness since then. And I can't say enough about our ownership group, SEG and Ryan and Ashley. I mean, what they said, that they delivered 100% and even more. Our practice facility is the nicest practice facility in the National Hockey League, and it's a testament to what they have done. And 12 months ago we put a shovel in the ground, and here we are now. It's done. So it's pretty impressive stuff.
I want to take you back to a unique time in any GM's life when the Phoenix Coyotes / Arizona Coyotes relocated to the college rink from the Glendale building.
Yeah.
Just tell me what that's like, because I can't imagine getting the word that, hey guys, we're moving out of a 20,000 seat building and going into a 3,500 seat building.
Well, I looked at only the positive, and I had to go out and sell it. And I just said, this is the fastest game on earth, and it's going to get a little faster because we're going to have the best ice in the National Hockey League in a small building like that. I said, listen, you're going to sit at center ice, and you're going to be 10 feet from the glass and in a box seat, and you're not going to get much better than that. You'll never get closer to an NHL game in that luxury. So we found ways to sell it. We built a facility the best that we could for our players. Enjoy the warm weather, boys. Whatever we could do to sell it, no state tax, the best taxes, the best weather. It's sunny every day. We did everything we could, and we hired people. They let us hire people at the time that could provide for the players and give from the time they landed here. They landed to the time that they went home. We tried to take care of them the best that we could. We did what we could with what we had.
Bill, last Arizona question from me. The last year you were there, and the rumor came out about going to Utah, and it seemed, at least from the outside, that really threw a monkey wrench into that season. It made everybody sort of, perhaps their focus came off of their task at hand because of that. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
It was a huge distraction for our team. We were flying along, and we ended up going on the road to Florida. It was a tough trip. We were playing Florida, Tampa, Carolina, Wash, and it just continued to surface, and it just continued to surface. And from that moment on, I think we went on a 14-game losing streak. It affected everybody. It affects your people that work for the club. It affects your players that are on the ice. It affects your media. Everybody's affected from it. So it was just a lot of energy sucked out of the room. At the end of the year, it came out again, and our players were kind of used to it. It didn't affect us. We kind of moved forward and kept winning and kept fighting. But the people, it does affect everybody. Everybody wants stability in the National Hockey League. Everybody wants a good owner and a good fan base. And when you don't tend to have all those aspects coming, it's just energy that is wasted energy. You're constantly fighting it off.
Bill, what can you say that is completely unique about the Salt Lake City market that is different? Because you've been to every market. What is so different and so unique and so appealing about Salt Lake City that people may not know?
People in Salt Lake are super nice people. I can't tell you the enthusiasm that they had for hockey. I think nobody could have predicted that. I don't think Ryan Smith and his group and everybody else could have predicted that when you walk into our building, and hopefully you guys can come see it, it feels like it's been around for 40 years. From the songs they play to the chants that people have to everybody wearing a Mammoth uniform, like it's jersey on. It's just crazy how well it's been done, and it makes it feel like it's been there forever. And it starts with our fan base. They're crazy. They're great. It's one of the loudest buildings in the National Hockey League.
Bill, last season, I did a interview on one of your radio stations all year long. And so I kept good track of how you guys were doing in the first season there. And you struggled on home ice. And then this year, you don't struggle on home ice. You're doing really well. Is there any explanation for that you see from the press box, or is that serendipity?
Yeah. No, there's a couple little excuses I would say that we had, but the main thing that we fought was we overtried. We were over emotional. We wanted to show our fans how much we cared, how we wanted, and we got frustrated. We were slamming our sticks, and I think it was a hard one too, because where we were practicing at the time only had one rink, and I don't know if it was set up to be an NHL rink at the time, and our ice wasn't, they tried the best they could, but it was hard to practice. And then we'd go to the game rink and the puck would bounce all over, and it was just a hard thing for us. It sounds like a little thing, but you're playing on it every night, and then you're over trying and you're over frustrated. And it took us a while to settle in and feel like it's like when you get a new house and you go home and finally one day you arrive and you're like, yeah, it feels like home now. When that day happened for us, it clicked. And all of a sudden we were like, okay, let's go. And we got into this rhythm of playing at home, and it's continued this year. And it's a great place to play. They got new seating in there. It looks like a hockey rink, and it's loud, and our fans are crazy. So you couldn't ask for anything more. And I think, on the other side of that, from what our organization's been through, we're super appreciative. We don't take our fans for granted. I think that's one thing about our group that probably makes us a little bit different from what we've been through. We're very appreciative of all the little things.
Kind of a good news, bad news thing here, because the club has only won 1 out of their last 7, but you've gotten points in your last 4 games. Real tough one in Anaheim, where you were ahead with 5 seconds left, got tied, and then lost in extra time. But now you've got some home cooking coming up, because along with Anaheim and Los Angeles, you've played the fewest home games. So you can see with the 5-1-1 record that comfort level is really starting to kick in, and something that you're sitting right on the bubble now, and perhaps you can use this schedule really to your advantage.
Yeah, and it has been a little bit of a battle lately. What I've liked about the group, though, is we've got 5 of the 8 points. In previous years with our young group, we wouldn't have been able to achieve that. So, yeah, it didn't go our way. There's some learning lessons in there for sure. Some hard ones that we had to learn early on. But I'd rather learn them early, and I'd rather know that our guys are finding ways to get points through a little bit of our struggle here. So it's a good thing. And I've always felt with this group and being young, from the Logan Coolies, the Gunthers, they're pretty adaptable kids. They want to win bad, and they want to learn quick. And, it's one thing to achieve points in the NHL. There's another thing to achieve points, as a player, but also win. It's a totally different, and we're kind of in that market now where you got to play a little defense. It's not just offense, and at the same time you got to produce. And our kids have adapted real well to that, and they're getting hardened every night. And when you have a loss like that in Anaheim, we're going to be a little tougher after that loss now that we've experienced that.
I really like the way this team is built right now. You've got 5 first picks in your lineup: Keller, Cooley, Gunther, Hayton, Simishev. Yeah. And you've been there since 2000. And you came over, really cut your teeth for the GM role in St. Louis. You won a Stanley Cup as assistant GM with the Blues in 2019. What would you say you took most out of your experience in St. Louis that prepared you for the GM position and to build this club the way you have?
Yeah, I mean, I had good experience about coaching, from assistant coach to head coach in the American League at a really, really young age. I think I was 31-year-old head coach in the American League. So I'd kind of get that underneath me, and then I got into scouting. and I learned how to evaluate. And then, obviously I had some great people in front of me of Jarmo Kekalainen and Doug Armstrong, so Larry Plows of the world. I had some really good hockey people to kind of to learn from and teach me about how to building teams. And St. Louis was a slow burn for us. So, it took us a while to kind of beat the Chicagos and LAs that were crushing it at the time and build a better team. And I learned a lot about the character and how to dig a little bit deeper when you're scouting to find the guys that are not only, as Larry Plow comes from Larry Plow, have talent, but they have first or second efforts. And I think that's what I kind of tried to bring. And when we gutted the whole organization from players to pretty much everything else, one of the things that we tried to do is our thought process was to build an elite front office hockey staff, championship staff off the ice before we could build one on the ice. And when we rolled in and we decided to start to go to work on drafting, we got two of the best scouts that I could find with Daryl and Ryan Jankowski, and they were unbelievable. They built an incredible scouting staff, and then we just tried to acquire as many picks as we could and take as many shots as we could. And right away we got Gunther, and that was, once you got him underneath our belt, we were like, okay, that was a massive draft for us because we got Doan and Moser in the same draft with Lilberg too was in there. So there was guys that we just were teeing in. It was a COVID year and our guys were on the road, and I knew we could hammer it because we did the work, and it wasn't easy scouting at the time, but that was kind of our base. And then the next year you come in with the Cooley, Geeky Lamoureux draft, and then Simashev Boot after that, and then we've got a couple good ones underneath our belt with the Ginland, Baudouin coming through, and some other guys, and Dionne. So we pride ourselves in being a scouting organization. That's the backbone of what we do. And now it's just a process of just adding player on player. One thing I always felt as a GM, I did a lot of study when I came in, and there's a lot of things I couldn't do because of money, but I always felt like the one thing that no one could stop us from doing was drafting. They're going to give you 7 picks every year, boys. They cannot stop you from drafting a good team. And that was our whole philosophy from the moment we walked in the doors. Get the best scouts, get the best process, go to work, outwork teams. And that's what we've tried to do with our scouting. And I like what our group has done. And we work on scouting. When we come in, from the start of the season, I remember when I first come in, the scouts used to go golfing. I banned that, and we go to scout school, and we go to work about getting a better process. And we work on that every single day. So that's kind of the backbone of how we got to where we are.
But you've also done a lot of work on the trade side, and free agent signings, and half of your defenses come via trade. You also got Peterka from Buffalo in that deal involving Kesselring. And your goaltenders, both free agents, Vejmelka and Vitek Vanacek. And you've also got some undrafted players. So it's an interesting mix. So as you evaluate this team, and of course, as Neil knows as well as anybody, it's a never-ending job because you're always looking forward. Where do you see this club having to bulk up the most as we get into the winter months and approach the trade deadline? What is the early evaluation of the team revealing for you?
Yeah, I think we're a fast-paced team. I don't think we're perfect. I don't think we're, like I always say to people, we're 60% done. We're not ready to win the cup just yet. It doesn't mean we can't work towards getting there, but we've got to take a step. And our step is trying to get in the playoffs. That's our goal. It's just grind every night to get points, to find a way to get in. The good news for our club is that we've got a few players in the minors that have a chance to come up and make an impact. So I don't know if the trade market is going to happen definitely for us, but I think what's going to happen is you're going to see some players push from the bottom. I think Daniel Boot, he's probably leading rookie scoring in the American League. He's 6'8". Lamoureux on the backside's taking huge step. He's 6'7". And Duda on the backside too. And there are a few other players that I'm not mentioning. That doesn't include, the Aginlas and Dionne and all the other guys and Baudouin that we've drafted that are coming in the following year. So if we're patient with the process and we have a little patience, we can let our guys roll in. And, we've had great success with the Doans and the Gunthers of putting them in the American League, getting them games. getting them to kind of grow through the American League. And I'm a huge believer that you play your way out of the American League, you're a lot tougher and you're a lot better by the time you get to the National Hockey League.
Bill, you talk about patience just now, and if we can be patient, the most important person to be patient, I know, is the owner, but that's not where I'm going on this. You have been extremely patient with your coach. And when I say you've been patient, I'm not saying because it's not for good reason. But tell us about Andre, because he doesn't get that much publicity, and he's been there quite a while. He's missed, look, the facts of the matter are he's missed the playoffs of many years, just like Jeff Blashill did in Detroit. And there was good reasons why Jeff Blashill missed the playoffs. And now he's a real good coach in Chicago. So can you tell us about your coach?
Yeah. I mean, when we ended up acquiring Andre, what I liked about him was he was a coach that's coming out of junior, that he was able to get the most out of his players and be hard on them, but not leave a scar. And he's a really good communicator that they play hard for him. And I felt like he could get through the rebuild with us. He's smart enough to be able to kind of adapt and change as the team gets better. It becomes a different game. When you're going through the rebuild, it's a different game that you're coaching. He was trying to establish culture of working hard and doing all the right things and playing hard and getting that selfishness out of the locker room. And I think he did an amazing job of that and getting everybody to buy in and take small steps every single year. And if you can look at our record, we've gotten better every single year, and the pressure has increased, which is a good thing. You want that pressure. It's a privilege to have that every day that you can feel. And Neil knows it. When you wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you feel in your gut. And it doesn't go away from the 4th of July all the way to the end of the year. And that's a great thing because you're constantly trying to make your team better. And I think Bear has been able to evolve. Andre's been able to evolve and take the next step every year with our group. And he's a really good communicator. I think players love to play for him. I think his strength is when something goes wrong, he can fix it, and he can self-correct the team. And I like the job that he's done, and he continues to have great relationships with our young players. And one of the things that we never talk about when you mention him is the environment that he creates. He creates an environment where people want to come to the rink on the days that they're supposed to be at the rink, and the days, when they can just wander in here and, get ice and work on their shooting. He creates an incredible environment for our players. They want to play for him and they want to come to the rink.
Bill, having said all that, the credit goes to you for the patience you've shown both when you were in Arizona, and it's been a short period now in Utah, just last season, obviously.
Yeah.
And there must have been times when media, fans, people said, like, geez, we're not winning. Why don't we get a different coach? But you held strong and said, no, we're not doing that. That's not where we're going.
Well, we always had a process here, and we always set goals internally. So one of the things was, and I'll tell you, we love the analytical side, and our first guy that we hired, he set the analytical bar so high. We'd go in the room and we were comparing ourselves to Colorado, and we had to get away from that in the rebuild. We had to be like, okay, who are we? What can we achieve this year? And I think because we just buried our head in the process with coach too, and just said, okay, these are the goals we want to achieve, and this is what we want to get out of every player. And when you go in there and you achieve every year, he does, and that's a credit to him too, that you don't go in the win so much. And we were in a market then, and we're in a market now that it's a little bit different. It's almost like a St. Louis market where it's you don't have to fire your coach every 3 games. And so I mean, I was one time I was standing there, and it was a Canadian media guy, and we were in Montreal. And he started giving it to me about, you didn't win, kind of what you're just talking about. And I pointed to the rafters and I said, the last time you won a championship was when? And you've had every resource in the world. And it's 30 some odd years or whatever. Look how long. And you guys have gone after it every single year. Yeah. And so, it's planning. That's one of the hard parts of the Canadian market is you don't have time to plan, where we did. You look at the Anaheims and the San Jose's. They've had time in their market to kind of rebuild and reboot and go at it. And when you're in Canada, it's hard to do that. Here we get a little bit of grace period to rebuild, and we used all of it. So
having said all that, and that's great stuff about your coach. I want to just hit on the uniforms because you changed this year. You went from the Utah Hockey Club, which I actually had thought that that's what you would do, because there wasn't time the first year to get all the stuff done that has to be done when you have a name. You kept Utah though, going down your road jerseys. Is that what's the reason for that? Or is there a reason?
Well, it's great pride. It's I don't know. Like we get in these situations where you're in the Ryan Smith's suite after the game, and the governor from Utah is there. Is a great man. And you say hi to him, and you're like, I have so much pride living in your state and playing in here, and the people, they're so proud of Utah. We wear it for the people, and just to say that across your chest, it's the simplest form of being proud to play here. It's a really special place in that manner. And they're grateful people. There's such a positive vibe in our community, whether you play for the Jazz or you play for the Mammoth. But people are super positive about it, and they're grateful to have NBA and NHL hockey in their city. And so I think we do wear it for the people in the state.
I think it's great that it just differentiates, and you've got a fabulous new logo, but at the same time, you do show that different identity and pride on the road by just having the state of Utah across the jersey the same way it was in your first year there. So you maintain that root. But before we let you go, want to bring you back to 1990, because you are certainly a piece of junior hockey lore. Scored the game-winning goal in double overtime for the Oshawa Generals to beat the Kitchener Rangers. And that goal originally was credited to Scott Lewick and then was changed. But, I went back to various websites, and some have you with one goal in the tournament, others have you with no goals. So what's the real lore behind that? Because the celebration was absolutely phenomenal, and we have a picture of you with the Memorial Cup afterwards. So tell us the lowdown of the entire episode for you, because wasn't Oshawa your third team that year?
Yeah, it was. I was working at a gas station in Concord, Ontario, after my season was done, and I picked up the Toronto Sun, and our team had moved from Toronto to Hamilton, and it said we'd got the Memorial Cup, and I go, there I am, in May, and I already know I'm going to be in the Memorial Cup, and I don't know, I had that extra bit of sense. I trained harder to fight in the summer. I worked at it constantly. I was in the gym. I was on the ice. I just knew it. And there I go to Hamilton, be the captain, and we're going to host, and we were awful. When I tell you we were bad, it was just, it was like we weren't even and I got traded to Niagara Falls, and then I got finally traded to Oshawa. When I got to Oshawa, we lost 10 straight games in a row. We were the number one ranked team in Canada, and they added me, and we lost 10 in a row.
With Eric Lindros on your team.
Yeah, and then we added the Big E came in, Freddie Brathwaite came in, and we started to roll, and we beat teams 3-2, 4-3, like just the right way. We played the right brand of hockey, no panic. We just crushed it every night. We won. We were a team you can only imagine behind the scenes. We loved each other. There's great coaching, Rick Kornacki, Larry Marsden, just an unbelievable junior. And they took pride about being from Oshawa too. Like they were all about the details. They were on me about making sure that I fought. They were on me about the details in front of the net and playing hard, tough hockey. And they had one thing that stood out in practice every day. Coach would say to me, hey, make sure you hit the net. Make sure you hit the net. Yep. Make sure you hit it. If he didn't say it a million times to me, and there we are in Cobb's Coliseum, where I got traded out of all places.
Yep.
And the puck comes to me, and it rang through my head. Make sure you get it on the net. But I also, when I shot that puck, wasn't very fast. And I knew that if it hit anything, I was in trouble because I hung in there long enough to get it. And I shot it. And as soon as I shot, I said, get to the middle of the ice, get back. And I turned and I took 3 good hard strides. And I heard this, ha! And this selfish little moment came over me where I said to myself, hey, I think I just got the assist on the game winner. And I turned around and my teammates mauled me. But that's just the type of team that we were. where the guy said, I didn't touch it. It's not my goal, and just unbelievable human beings on that team. And it was half hockey players, half doctors and lawyers, and the most successful, great people you see in the world. We go back for reunions and all the hockey players look at all the doctors, lawyers, and architects and say, hey, we should have been you. And they all look at us, man, we should have stayed in hockey. So it's an amazing bunch of guys, and we get together about every few years and celebrate again. So it's a pretty cool thing.
You talked about what amazing people they are. And when I looked at the footage of this goal, your goalie, Freddie Brathwaite, that you had mentioned before and played in the NHL a bit, and instead of jumping into the mosh pile, he went to the other end of the rink to console the Kitchener goalie, Mike Torchia. And that was just one great piece of it amongst a team that I believe won its first Memorial Cup that year in 44 years for Oshawa.
Yeah, it was a long time, and you felt for the Kitchener Rangers. They were an unbelievable organization. They had unbelievable players. When you go that far into double overtime, and you'd have stuff ringing through your brain. It'd be like, hey, man, like I remember I got caught on a line change coming off the bench. I might have been the slowest player on the ice, I think, but I was the fastest player for the next 10 seconds catching that guy. Like I was not going to make TSN with my man. And I remember I hooked a guy down. It was Gilbert Dion, who was a pretty good junior player, went on to play. And I hooked him, and then I cross-checked him, and he was whining to Steve Walkham. And Walkham looked at him, and he goes, hey, I ain't deciding this one, boys. So I knew right then it was like street rules,
Well, Army, this has been fantastic. And I sure hope Vic and I can get out there or to the arena and see the team in person. I've seen you play at UBS Arena in New York, but I find your team really exciting. It's a fun team to watch. It was fun to do that show last year in Utah all year long, and kept me staying up late at night watching the hockey club games. It's been great. I really admire your patience. I know how easy it is to lose patience, and somehow God gave you some great patience, because you've stuck with this, and it's now, I think it's going to bear fruit for you soon. So Vic and I really appreciate you doing this with us. We hope to have you back again sometime, and just good luck the rest of the way.
I appreciate it. We'd love to have your show. We'd bring you right in Utah. Make sure you guys come out. We'd love to have you. It's a heck of experience coming out here and come into the Delta Center. You know what? Let's make a promise. When we get into the playoffs, you guys are coming, right? We
can do a live show from there. How about a live stream? As long as you'll come on as a guest on the live stream, so that we've got a reason,
100%.
so that we have a reason for fans to want to look at it.
Well, hey, listen, you know what I'd like to do with you one time, Neil, too, is we'll have to do a show about drafting and talk about some of the great scouts. And my old agent, Anton Thun, gave me a book about every GM that's been in the National Hockey League. And there's a great picture all the old scouts going to Europe from Ken Holland, and you actually are taking the picture. It even talks about you taking the picture in there and all the great old scouts. But we need to do a show one day and talk about some of the guys that have drafted the Hall of Famer players out of nowhere, and they need a little bit of love, because there's a whole story behind a story about hockey, and you've got a great history of drafting players too.
Bill, one of my favorite things to do with the players when we get together with the '94 team, I love this, is I get to tell the player and his wife and family how he ended up on the Rangers. Because you never do that, do you? When you trade for a guy, you don't sit him down and say, okay, well, here was my thought, and then I was able to do this, and I bamboozled the other guy into this. I really find that fun now that we're all on the same level. I'm no longer the GM. I'm just one of their friends. So, Bill, we won't keep you any longer. Good luck to you, the Mammoth, and Coach Tourigny. And we'll be watching and cheering and hoping that you get in the playoffs.
Can't wait to see you guys at the playoffs here, boys. It's going to be good.
All right. Take care.
Sounds great.
Well, Vic, that was just outstanding. What a great guy. I really got to tell you, I don't know Bill Armstrong as well as say I know Doug Armstrong, but what an entertaining interview. What an insightful interview. really, I really enjoyed that.
I'll tell you what I enjoy. The prospect of them making the playoffs and dipping into the NHL wraparound budget to fly out to Salt Lake City.
Well, you can't dip very far into a non-existent budget.
But nonetheless, the invite, it's so funny because through the contacts that we've made through this show, the relationships that are built, and having covered so many of these teams, you wind up becoming a fan of everybody. You root for people.
Well, and you really do. And when I say at the end there, we'll be cheering for you, I really mean it. Like, not that we're literally going to sit and cheer, but we are hoping for good things, because now you feel like you know the guy. And how do you cheer against guys that you know and you like? But that turns out to be the whole league. So we're hard pressed to cheer against anybody, because this show ends up making you like and more importantly, respect everybody.
As we mentioned earlier in the show, the quarter pole of the season is coming up on Thursday, and we thought we'd do something a little bit different here and take a look at the 8 teams that did not make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference last season, and what needs to happen or may not happen to either get them in the playoffs or prevent them from making it again. We're going to do the Western Conference teams next week. But Neil, we're going to start with the New York Islanders, who currently are sitting in a wild card spot, entering play on Wednesday. Why will they get in, or why won't they get in, as we look forward to the last 3 quarters of the season?
Well, the 2 guys that will give them reason to get in is clearly Bo Horvat, who's having a tremendous start with 13 goals and a plus 12 already this season. And, of course, young Matthew Schaefer, who's leading the league in power play points for defensemen. He's come in and been a huge thing. I think he's actually an upgrade to Noah Dobson, who they traded to Montreal. And while we thought that losing Dobson was going to be a negative, I'm not sure that they haven't come out net positive with this young kid, Schaefer. So those are the reasons why they could make it. Why will they maybe not make it? Well, their goaltending, neither one is at 900 save percentage. They got to get up to 900 save percentage on those 2. I'd say right now the New York Islanders are right on the bubble of making it, not making it. If you said to me, are they going to make it? At this point, I'd have to say yes, but it's a long season. And as you said, we're only a quarter of the way through. But Vic, what about our friend, the Boston Bruins?
I think the reason that they may get in, or they could contend, is because Marco Sturm has done a really nice job putting a structured system in. They don't have overwhelming personnel, but you can see that this team is buying into what Sturm is selling this year. However, the reason I don't think they would make it is because their top end scoring is just too thin. If David Pastrnak or Morgan Geekie get hurt, that's going to be it for them, because there will simply be too much of a shortage of offensive production to be able to sustain over a long period of time. So now I throw it back to you. New York Rangers. Why or why not?
Well, why is because they're playing so well on the road. They're road warriors. They go away. They win everywhere they go. Why they're not going to make it is because in their own barn they can't win a game. They've won 1 game in their own building, and that's Madison Square Garden, where you should have a distinct advantage over the road team coming in. The other reason why they may not make it, JT Miller. He's not doing enough for them. He's got 10 points in 21 games, and I think he's getting the 4th most ice time on the team. He's got to do more than that. I'm not sure that they're a heavy enough team. They're 14th in the conference in goals for. They're good on goals against. They're 4th in goals against. Right now, if you had to say will they or won't they, I say they're not going to make it. But let's stay within New York State and go up to Western New York and our favorite 14-time non-making it team with the Buffalo Sabres.
You're rough. I think the only reason, it's actually not the only reason, but I think it's time. And some of these players are starting to come of age a little bit. Of course, Tage Thompson has been there forever, but they've got a number of other players that can offensively produce on that club. I think they have one of the better young defense corps in the league. Rasmus Dahlin is back after having spent time in Sweden. He missed 3 games to be with his fiance who had a heart transplant. He came back. He's got 4 assists in the first 2 games. And I think if their goaltending holds up, has been outstanding so far this season, I think it will give them a shot. But the other piece of this is that even though they're still in last, they are relatively close. But in past seasons, they haven't been able to avoid a long losing streak, which essentially dumps them out of the race. So those are the 2 pieces for the Buffalo Sabres. So now I send it back to you for the Philadelphia Flyers. Why or why not?
Philadelphia's not going to make it this season. I'm just going to cut right to the chase. They're 16th in the conference in goals for. They're good on goals against at 3rd. Their row is 5. That means regulation or overtime wins. They've only got 5, and that's 16th in the conference. So if you'd end up tied with somebody, you're not winning on the row. So I don't see any strong point that it's going to push them into playoffs. Vladar, the goaltender that they got from Calgary, is free agent, playing well for them. But other than that, I just don't see a reason why the Philadelphia Flyers are going to go from where they are now, which is number 6 in the wild card standings, to number 1 or 2. I just don't see it happening. But let's stay in these bubble teams from last year and go to the Columbus Blue Jackets, who last night had to play in Winnipeg after playing the night before at home and flew 1,500 miles overnight to arrive in their hotel at 4 a.m.
That game in and of itself is not going to be why or why not, but I look at the positive first with them, is that this club was able to create an identity a year ago with the passing of Johnny Gaudreau, and we're really on a mission the entire year to try to get in the playoffs. They just fell short at the end because they went south in March after their outdoor game against the Detroit Red Wings. But this is a club this year that I believe learned a lot from having to galvanize with Gaudreau's passing, and they're a more mature team this year. The one thing that scares me about them a little bit would be the injury bug. And Boone Jenner, who missed 56 games last year, he's out long-term again this time around. And I'm not certain that this club is going to be able to sustain injuries to key players. We could look at Adam Fantilli and Kirill Marchenko, players of that nature. And if either of those 2 players get injured, and let's not forget Zach Werenski, who's one of the best defensemen in the NHL and has had injury problems in the past. If either of those 3 players get hurt and they're out for a sustainable period of time, that's what I see keeping Columbus out. So last one for you, Pittsburgh Penguins.
I'm going to shock you with this one. Pittsburgh's going to make the playoffs this year. And I didn't see this coming, but they are going to make it unless they get devastating injuries. Their goaltending has been really good up till this point. They're 9th in the conference in goals for. They're 2nd in goals against. They're not getting scored on a lot. They've got a very good row. And as I said, their goalies are both well over 900 save percentage, 911 and 917. But here's the one, and you know me with this goal differential thing. They're number 3 in the entire 32-team league with a plus 12 at this point. That's going to take some pretty awful hockey to knock that thing down to a minus, which would knock them out of the playoffs on the Neil Smith barometer. But I think the Pittsburgh Penguins have put enough chestnuts in their tree that they're going to be able to make it through the winter and come out in the spring fat and in the playoffs. So I give them a lot of credit. I didn't see this coming. New coach Dan Muse must be doing a heck of a job. And we know that Sidney Crosby is the ageless wonder. We know how well he's playing. So, yeah, I'm shocked that I'm saying this at this point in the season, but I think I would bet on the Pittsburgh Penguins to be making the playoffs this year. Last team that we're going to...
I'm stunned. I'm shocked.
Well,
I'm shocked.
I know you are, and that's why we do this live and we don't tip each other off beforehand. My old team in the Motor City, the Detroit Red Wings. What do you think?
I think that the reason they would get in is because a lot of these players have had time to mature together. I think I'd like to see Dylan Larkin get back in the playoffs for the first time since he was a rookie. I think they've got some other good components on that team. Alex DeBrincat, Patrick King gives them leadership and championship pedigree. I don't hate their defense. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. And I believe that their goaltending has been stabilized with John Gibson and Cam Talbot. So this is one of those teams that I believe is going to go right to the wire because they're not elite, but they're good enough to hang around. And if they can run up a string of wins heading into the holiday, maybe create a little bit of space between them and the rest of the bubble teams, they'll be able to hang on at the end. But the other pieces, they haven't gotten in 9 years. And much like Buffalo, I'm afraid that this club is susceptible to an extended winless streak that would keep them out. And we've seen it in their past, and we could see it again in their future. You are what you are until you show us differently.
Very good.
I enjoyed that. We'll do this again with the West next week. So I want to talk some elder statesmen here. It seems that every time Alex Ovechkin scores, we have to make some sort of mention of it, but I promise that we're not going to talk about every goal until he gets to 1,000, if he ever gets there. But on Monday, he scored number 903 in a 2-1 win over the LA Kings. That was his 442nd goal at the MCI Center / Verizon Center / Capital One Arena, surpassing Gordie Howe at the Detroit Olympia, place that you might be a little familiar with.
Yeah, I saw them tear it down, and I also saw games in there.
Winnipeg forward Mark Scheifele, 3 assists on the night that he became the Winnipeg Jets' all-time franchise leader in games played with 898, surpassing Blake Wheeler. It was a 5-2 win for the Jets against Columbus. And as you had mentioned before, the Blue Jackets had a really rotten piece of scheduling handed to them by having to fly into Winnipeg after playing in Columbus on Monday, winning that game in a shootout. They get in at 3:30 a.m., as you had said, but that was 4:30 in the time that they had left Columbus. You're also going through customs. That's pretty rough.
Yeah, that's really unfair. I mean, there is no chance that the Winnipeg Jets are a really good team, and they're sitting in Winnipeg waiting, not playing, watching Columbus play Montreal. Then Columbus gets on a plane in Ohio and flies to Manitoba and has to go through customs and get to the hotel so late. I've actually was so appalled, but I've never seen this before where a team has to do something like that on a back-to-back situation. At least if Winnipeg had played the night before, they'd have some chance, but they had no chance with that kind of schedule.
Everybody goes through it. And of course, scheduling now is much more complicated with every arena being a multifaceted facility. And so in our past, I think we remember that teams would generally, back in the, let's say, original 12 era, would have maybe 2 designated home nights and a designated road night. And that would, of course, change if they went on road trips and stuff like that. And right now, you just see games scattered all over the place.
Yeah, because you have to get in all these games, 32 teams, and each team has to play 82 games. And there's Olympics in the same season. You're jamming everything together.
You know where I was on Tuesday?
Probably sitting at home watching TV.
No. It's a non-record day for us, but the Hartford Wolfpack, the Rangers minor league affiliate, the AHL, had a school day game that started at 11 a.m., so a lot of the districts in the surrounding Hartford area brought their students, about 5,000 screaming kids with a pitch high enough to attract like every dog in the Hartford area to the arena. But nonetheless, part of the intrigue of that game was Milan Lucic playing for Springfield, and he's on a PTO, was signed by the Blues to that professional tryout on November the 4th. And through 4 games, he's got 1 assist and is a -8. And I got to tell you something. He's a former Stanley Cup champion, 2011 with the Bruins. He still works hard. He tries. But boy, he is just a Hulk around the rink right now. And getting from A to B on an AHL level was challenging. I don't see it on an NHL level. And if the Blues have to call him up, they're in trouble.
Yeah, well, he probably just wants to give it one more shot before he hangs it up for good. He struggled in his days, in Edmonton and Calgary, and he's been given some chances. He certainly had a good career. If this is the end of it, he did have a good career.
For sure. You've got some personnel updates and more news coming out of Florida, and it's not good.
No, it's not. Cole Schwindt will be out 2 to 3 months when he broke his arm banging into goaltender Bobrovsky on his own team. That's plain bad luck. And listen to this one. Eetu Luostarinen out week to week because of a barbecuing accident. I mean, I barbecue every night, and I don't know what kind of accident you get in a barbecue, but maybe the lid fell on his arm. I don't know. Here's another one for you. Toronto, Auston Matthews, improving, but definitely out for Thursday's game.
Let's hit some other injury updates here. And I'm going to save Toronto for last in this one because I want to actually talk about the game itself. They played on Tuesday against St. Louis. Charlie McAvoy, the Bruins, still possible surgery after being hit on the chin by a Noah Dobson shot on Saturday in Montreal. He did not travel with the team as the Bruins start a 4-game road trip. 5 of the 6 Americans that have already been named to the U.S. Olympic team have missed time this year due to injury. McAvoy, Matthews, both Kachuk brothers, and Quinn Hughes. Jack Eichel is the lone exception there. Unbelievable.
It really is. And now Jack Hughes, who you be sure will be on that team, is out with a cut finger that required surgery.
In Seattle, goaltender Matt Murray is out for 6 weeks after leaving Saturday's win against San Jose, but just in time because Joey Decord has been activated after missing 5 games with an upper body injury. So, in effect, Seattle now has their number 1 and 2 back with Decord and Philip Grubauer.
Yeah, so Lane Lambert's got to continue having a good start to the season. Seattle has fluttered a little bit lately, but the goaltending being straightened out should get them back on track.
Still in a wild card as we record this on Wednesday. For Vegas, defenseman Jeremy Lauzon is on IR. He was put there prior to the Golden Knights 3-2 win over the Rangers on Tuesday. And now let's circle back to Toronto because Matthew Nyes missed that game on Tuesday against St. Louis with a lower body injury. The Maple Leafs had $35 million worth of salary out of the lineup for that game. And what made this one pretty intriguing was William Nylander, who head coach Craig Berube has been on constantly since the start of this season, had no shots on goal the last 2 games, and first goal of the game, which was credited to Nathan Walker, Nylander actually batted the puck backwards into his own net. So he finally gets a shot after 3 games. It goes into his own net. But this does have a happy ending because he did wind up scoring the overtime winner on a spectacular play by John Tavares. Where have you heard this before? Where he drew all 3 Blues to him along the boards, managed to kick the puck out to Morgan Riley, who got it over to Nylander. Great little toe drag and a terrific move to finish on Jordan Binnington to get the Leafs a much needed.
That was a terrific goal by Nylander. High skill. Really worth finding and watching if you haven't seen it.
Fun show today. Thanks to Utah General Manager Bill Armstrong for joining us.
And thank you to the listeners, all of you that are out there that listen to us and or watch us on YouTube. Reach out to us. Tell us what you think, what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see. Try us at Neil@NHLWraparound.com or Vic@NHLWraparound.com. Don't forget, wherever you are, you can hear this podcast. It's Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube. Please subscribe and get your friends to subscribe. We need all those subscribers we can get so that we can get sponsors, and then we can keep doing this.
Closing in on the 700 mark, and 700 subscriber will get his name mentioned, and Neil will send you a coffee mug. So please sign up, get your friends, and let's keep moving this thing forward. Our website, NHLWraparound.com, and the latest on New York Centric by Patrick Hoffman talks about the New York Islanders and their winning ways. We also have Neil's Nuggets and Smith's Picks. Captain, you are 4-1 on consecutive nights. You've eclipsed the 100 mark. You're 104, 62, and 24. I'm not saying that you're the member of the 100 club because, as we said a week ago, there's no club. It's just you.
Just me and my 610 winning percentage, which I'll take it.
Short Shifts comes your way again on Friday. Celebrity show next Tuesday. And Wraparound again next Wednesday in advance of Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.